I knew something was wrong the moment 3 men in matching windbreakers marched up my mountain driveway like they owned the place. But even then, I didn't expect them to claim that I wasn't the owner of a lodge I'd spent 10 years planning, 2 years building, and every last dollar making real. It still shocks me how quickly a dream can turn into a declaration of war. The wind was whipping ice crystals across the newly stained cedar deck as I stepped out, still holding the mug of coffee I'd been savoring. It was my first morning waking up inside the lodge, my mountain sanctuary, perched on a cliff overlooking the Silver Pine Valley. The sunrise had painted the snowcaps gold. I'd never felt more alive. Then the HOA showed up. "Are you Carson Hale?" the tallest one asked, flipping open a binder like some sort of badge. "That's me," I said, tightening the flannel jacket around my shoulders. He gave my lodge a slow, satisfied once-over, as if he were praising a prize hog at a county fair. "Beautiful structure you have here," he said. "Truly exceptional. Built to exact specifications we've been needing for years." "Specifications you need." I repeated, "This is my home." The man smiled like he was telling a child the rules of a board game. "Well, that's why we're here. As of this morning, the Pine Ridge Mountain Homeowners Association is informing you that this structure," he tapped the cedar siding with his clipboard, "belongs to the association." I laughed. I genuinely, honestly laughed, because no sane person would have believed what I'd just heard. "You're telling me my lodge belongs to the HOA?" I asked. "The same HOA whose territory begins 2 miles downhill? The HOA I'm not even part of." "Correct," he said smoothly. "There was a boundary realignment 2 weeks ago. Your land is now within HOA jurisdiction. Because this structure fits the criteria for a Pine Ridge Communal Lodge, built with the Environment Code, shared amenity design, scenic conformity style 4, it qualifies as property maintained by the HOA." He paused. "And therefore owned by it." I stared at them. My coffee mug slipped out of my hand and shattered on the steps. They didn't even flinch. The shortest man, who had a smug red nose and wore wool gloves like he'd never worked an honest day in his life, added, "We expect the keys by Friday. You'll have to vacate by then. Of course, residents are welcome to rent space within the lodge for a reduced member rate." Rent. My own home. The lodge I'd milled logs for myself. The lodge I'd almost lost fingers building in sub-zero weather. The lodge I'd paid engineers, surveyors, and builders for. Every invoice burned into my savings. I felt something in my chest go tight and cold. "No," I said quietly. The tallest one's smile faded. "This isn't a negotiation, Mr. Hale." "It wasn't a negotiation when I bought this land either." I shot back. "And I sure as hell didn't negotiate with you to build on it." The smug one flipped through some paperwork. "According to Addendum 54B, subsection." "I don't care," I snapped. "You're not taking my home." They exchanged looks, condescending ones that said he thinks he has a chance. The tall one said, "We understand this is difficult. New members often resist at first." "I'm not a member." "You are now, whether you like it or not." Again, boundary shifts. "Show me," I demanded. "Show me this realignment." He lifted the binder. "All in here. Certified by county planning." County planning? I hadn't received any notice. No letter. No email. Nothing. My jaw clenched. "I'm calling my lawyer." "You're welcome to," the tall one said. "But lawsuits are expensive. HOA property claims are airtight. We've been planning this lodge for years. And when structures appear that meet our standards, we..." "Standards?" I barked. "I built this place for me. Not for you. Not for anyone." The red-nosed one gave a little shrug. "Well, you built it too well." They handed me a packet, thick as a phone book, and turned to leave, walking down my driveway with that arrogant, leisurely pace of people who believe they've already won. The steel door slammed shut behind me as I went inside, my hand shaking with fury. I grew up in this valley. My grandfather taught me to lay timber. My father taught me to hunt, camp, and survive these mountains. Building this lodge wasn't just a project. It was fulfilling a legacy. Every ridgeline, every scar on the back, every wind pattern. I knew all of it. I'd chosen this land because it was mine. And now some paper-pushing tyrants in nylon jackets thought they could swoop in and claim my birthright? Not a shot. I laid the HOA packet on the dining table and stared at it. 1,000 pages of rules, fines, maps, boundaries, signatures. It was a bureaucratic monster, one designed to scare people into obedience. But I wasn't people. I wasn't some frightened homeowner worried about lawn heights or mailbox paint. I built a lodge on a cliff in grizzly country, and I wasn't afraid of war. Still, I needed to know how deep this went. Who signed off on the boundary realignment? Why hadn't I been notified? How could they claim land with an existing private deed? Why did they want my lodge specifically? I read until midnight, flipping through legal jargon, diagrams, and signatures. Something felt off, suspicious, manufactured. Then I found it, an appendix with a scanned copy of the new boundary map signed by a county official I didn't recognize. The signature looked shaky. Almost traced. The seal was smudged. And the date? 2 weeks ago. Exactly when the HOA said the boundary changed. Exactly when my lodge passed final inspection. The timing was too perfect. Too clean. Someone wanted this lodge. Someone had orchestrated this. But why? What was so special about my land, my cliffside, that they would falsify documents to get it? I slammed the binder shut, my pulse pounding. Was someone in the HOA working with someone at the county office? Or was it something bigger? Either way, this wasn't just a property dispute. It was a setup. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows. The mountains felt heavier. The whole valley seemed to be holding its breath. And then a thought hit me so hard I whispered it aloud. What if they weren't just after the lodge, but what was under it? My grandfather once told me the mountain held secrets, old mining routes, hidden caverns, forgotten veins where the original settlers never fully mapped. I never believed him, but the HOA didn't want my home. They wanted the ground. I stood, heart racing. If they thought they could steamroll me, they had no idea who they were dealing with. Because I wasn't going to fight them in their arena, I was going to drag them into mine. And in my mountains, I always win. As I stared out at the valley lights twinkling below, I made my decision. I would find out who forged the documents. I would expose whoever was behind this, and I would make them regret ever stepping onto my land. The HOA had declared war. They just didn't know I was the wrong damn man to provoke. And before this was over, they wished they'd never climbed my mountain. I didn't sleep that night. Rage is a funny way of keeping a man awake. Sharp, electric, almost invigorating. As dawn crept over the peaks, I had already brewed a pot of coffee strong enough to resuscitate the dead and set to wake. If the HOA thought they were dealing with some docile homeowner, they were in for a brutal awakening. I wasn't backing down, not when my family's legacy was at stake. But revenge, real revenge, isn't served hot. It's served precise. I started with step 1, find the weak link. HOAs weren't monoliths. They were always composed of 2 types of people. The petty tyrants drunk on power. The folks who signed up for the free donuts and ended up trapped in a dictatorship. You can always crack the second type. I drove down the mountain to the Pine Ridge Community Center, the HOA headquarters trying to claim my land. The parking lot was half empty except for a line of Subaru Outbacks, a BMW that had never touched gravel, and a Jeep covered in so many vanity stickers it probably needed therapy. Inside, I found exactly what I hoped for. The board secretary, Lisa, windbreaker, yes, clipboard, yes. But unlike the 3 stooges who visited me, she had worry lines around her eyes and a mug that read I'd rather be hiking alone. Perfect. I stepped up to her desk. She didn't look up. Next. I just need to ask a question, I said softly. She sighed, lifted her eyes, and froze. Recognition flickered across her face. You're Carson Hale. Guilty. Her expression scrunched with discomfort. Look, I don't want any trouble. Okay? I'm just doing paperwork. The board makes all the decisions. That's why I'm here, I said. To understand. No yelling. Just the truth. She swallowed. Truth is, I don't agree with what happened to you. A crack. Good. I didn't think the boundary change was legal, she whispered. Nobody on the General Committee voted on it. It was just announced. By who? I pressed. She hesitated, glancing around the empty lobby before leaning in. Gerald Thorne. Ah, I'd heard the name. Gerald Thorne, the HOA president, self-appointed guardian of mountain aesthetic guidelines and universally despised by anyone with pulse. Rumor had it he once fined a resident for having an aggressively tall flagpole. And now he was trying to steal my lodge. Lisa, I said quietly, did Gerald say why he wanted the land? Her eyes darted to the window before she whispered. He said the HOA needed a new lodge, a scenic community retreat, but he's been having private meetings with a land developer. Developer? Of course. Hoes didn't want cabins. They wanted contracts. My land, with its cliffside overlook and year-round access. A gold mine. Thank you, I said. You've helped more than you know. She gave me a small, guilty look. Just be careful. They think you're isolated up there. Easy to push around. I smiled. They thought wrong. Revenge step 2. Undermine the enemy. The HOA thrive on appearances, order, compliance, perfect lawns, uniform shutters. The moment cracks formed in their facade, their entire power structure trembled. So I began introducing a little chaos. Late that evening, I parked my truck near the community entrance. From behind the tree line, I watched as the HOA's decorative holiday lights, meticulously arranged in symmetrical patterns, blinked peacefully. With one snip of wire cutters, half the lights went dark. Another snip, and the rest flickered like a dying hospital monitor. Annoying? Yes. Illegal? Technically still my rights of way? Absolutely. But it wasn't about the lights. It was about the message. By the following morning, the Pine Ridge Community Forum was exploding. Does anyone else's exterior outlet keep tripping? My reindeer display short-circuited. Who unplugged the HOA office generator? It was beautiful. They blamed everything from squirrels to solar storms. One resident suggested rogue raccoons somehow collaborating. Already, they were scrambling, but I wasn't done. Next, I sent anonymous letters, crafted with meticulous care, to 20 residents. Letters from the HOA implying new, absurd regulations. All doormats must be HOA-approved bays. Backyard hammocks must be licensed. No wind chimes over 4 inches due to potential avalanche interference. Pure, chaotic nonsense. People were livid. Within a day, a mob of angry neighbors stormed the HOA office demanding answers. They shouted, cursed, and waved their fake regulation letters like torches. Lisa later texted me from a burner number I'd given her. This is insane. Gerald is losing it. Board is falling apart. Perfect. The more pressure I applied, the more mistakes they'd make. But all of it was just a warm-up. The real strike, the knockout, had to come from the truth. Revenge step 3, expose the corruption. First, I needed evidence. Real evidence. So that night, I drove quietly to the county records building, a squat brick structure with motion lights as sensitive as chipmunks. I wasn't breaking in. I wasn't stupid. But I did know someone who had access. A childhood friend, Sawyer, now worked as a junior clerk in zoning and development. I called him from the parking lot. "Carson," he answered groggily. "It's midnight." "I need a favor," I said. "A big one." Sawyer arrived 10 minutes later, wearing pajama pants and a hoodie. "If this gets me fired, you're hiring me to chop wood for the rest of my life." "Deal." He let me into the records room and pulled up the land boundary documents. And there it was, the smoking gun. The real county map, filed 2 months ago, showed my land clearly outside HOA jurisdiction. The new map, filed 2 weeks ago, looked sloppy, rushed, stamped with a digital seal instead of embossed. And the signature? Not even close. Sawyer pulled up older documents. The county official's real signature had thick, looping strokes. The forged one was tight and shaky. "Someone faked this," Sawyer said. "This is criminal, Carson." I leaned closer. Who submitted the document? Sawyer clicked through metadata. My jaw clenched as the name appeared on the screen. Gerald Thorne, The HOA president himself. He'd filed it under the guise of a boundary correction request, using a temporary deputy's account code, a code belonging to an employee who had retired last year. So he's not just corrupt, Sawyer muttered. He's sloppy. I snapped photos of everything. Maps, files, digital logs, timestamps. This was enough to ruin him. But I wanted more. Can we see who the land developer is? I asked. Sawyer hesitated. Carson. Sawyer. Another sigh. Another few keystrokes. The name popped up. Silver Pine Resorts Incorporated, a company known for luxury ski retreats. And the signatory on their development interest form? Gerald Thorne. He wasn't sabotaging the HOA for power. He was selling the land out from under them for millions, using my lodge as a shiny carrot. I felt the anger rise again, slow and volcanic. He wanted my home because selling the land without a structure was worthless. With a lodge on it, the developer could market it as a ready-to-convert premier scenic destination. He never intended to keep the lodge for the community. He wanted to sell my legacy. But now, I had everything I needed to destroy him. Revenge step 4, public execution, reputationally speaking. The HOA scheduled a mandatory emergency meeting the next evening. They'd posted the notice everywhere, probably trying to salvage their imploding leadership. I walked in through the back door. Heads turned. Murmurs spread. Gerald sat at the front table, jaw clenched, hair overly gelled, face pinched in fury. Mr. Hale, he said coldly, this is a private meeting. No, I said, stepping forward. This is the perfect meeting. I dropped the folder on the table. The room went silent. Inside were printed copies of the forged boundary map, the metadata, the fake signature, the development contracts, everything. This, I said, voice steady, is what your president has been doing behind your backs. Gasps. Whispers. Someone whispered, is that real? It's real, I said. Your president attempted to steal my land, falsify county documents, and sell your entire mountain district to a private developer. You weren't going to get a lodge. You were going to get eviction notices. Gerald shot up. You can't. This is outrageous. I turned to the board. Call the county. Call the sheriff. Hell, call the governor if you want. Every file checks out. Lisa stood up, eyes blazing. Gerald, is this true? His silence was enough. Chaos erupted. Residents shouted. Board members slammed their papers. Someone threw a coffee cup. And Gerald? He bolted for the door. I smiled. Cowards always ran. The sheriff arrested him the next morning. Sawyer had already forwarded everything. Charges included fraud, falsification of public records, attempted real estate theft, and conspiracy. As for the HOA, they voided every claim they had on my lodge within 48 hours. And the developer? They vanished like smoke. No company touches a scandal like that. I drove back up the mountain, the cold biting at my cheeks, the sky clear and endless. My lodge stood exactly where it should, on my land, under my name, untouchable. As I stepped onto the deck, I whispered the words that had fueled me since the very beginning. Not a shot. And for the first time in days, I let myself breathe. The mountain was mine again.